Game theory's blind spot: why the West miscalculated the ideological battlefield. During the Cold War, the United States and its allies relied heavily on game theory, a mathematical framework designed to predict rational decision-making. From nuclear deterrence to economic policy, every major Cold War strategy was built on the assumption that political actors make logical, self-interested choices. But what if that assumption was wrong? What if the real war wasn't military or economic, but ideological? A battlefield where rationality plays second fiddle to belief, identity, and self-replicating cultural systems. This is the story of how the West won the Cold War, yet lost the ideological battle that followed, the Cold War's game theory strategy. Game theory was the foundation of Cold War strategy. It framed global conflict as a rational contest between two opposing forces, each trying to maximize its own advantage. This logic led to policies like mutual assured destruction, MAD, the idea that nuclear war was unwinnable because both sides would be obliterated. It also shaped economic policy, with Western leaders assuming that once communism failed, its adherents would naturally abandon it. The free market had won. Democracy had prevailed. Francis Fukuyama even declared this moment the end of history, a permanent victory of liberal democracy over totalitarian ideologies. But game theory had a fatal blind spot. It misunderstood the nature of ideas. The ideological war wasn't about rational choice. Unlike military forces, ideas don't need borders or governments to survive. They can spread through culture, academia, and institutions, even after the states that first promoted them collapse. When the Soviet Union fell, Marxist thought didn't die. It evolved. It was rebranded by intellectuals in Western universities. Critical theory, postmodernism, and identity politics took the Marxist concept of class struggle and replaced it with power struggles based on race, gender, and sexuality. A teacher says, "Math is racist because it assumes one correct answer." A historian says, "There are no objective facts, only perspectives." A journalist says, "It's not about reporting truth, it's about advocating for justice." Each of these statements represents an ideological shift, one that game theory never accounted for. The self-replicating nature of ideology. Unlike state actors, ideologies don't surrender. They adapt. After the Cold War, Marxist-derived thought took root in Western universities. It spread into education, media, and corporate HR departments. The West had spent decades defending against external threats, but ignored the ideological transformation happening internally. Governments assumed that free markets and democracy would naturally prevail, but they failed to see that the institutions shaping the next generation had already been ideologically captured. By the time political leaders realized what had happened, it was too late. The ideological battlefield had shifted, and rational self-interest was no longer the driving force. Identity, activism, and narrative control were. The West's miscalculation and the road ahead. Game theory's blind spot wasn't just an academic mistake, it was a strategic failure. Western leaders thought winning the Cold War meant winning the ideological war, but ideology isn't a government. It's a self-replicating force, one that outlasts regimes, elections, and even economic collapses. The real question is, can the West recognize the battle it's actually in? Because if we continue to act as if ideology plays by the rules of rational self-interest, we will keep losing, even when we think we're winning.